Hi, this is Scott Garibay. Today I'm going to be talking about specifically Star Wars The Last Jedi, the Ahch-To Gnarled Tree. This content contains major spoilers for Star Wars The Last Jedi. Alright, let's talk about the Ahch-To Gnarled Tree. The Ahch-To, which is the Jedi Temple planet where Luke resides in The Last Jedi, where specifically where Chewbacca and Rey have gone to find him. Alright? One of the things that's really interesting about that specific place, the Ahch-To Gnarled Tree, is that gnarled tree contained the Jedi texts. There was a special, shelf built within the gnarled tree. Behind it, there's a centering of all the different vines. It's really quite beautiful. It was really it looked like a piece of art. It was incredible, right? So actually, if we first see this, the Jedi sacred texts, which there is so much happening in Last Jedi, just so much happening. Okay, so one of the things is that is really fascinating is the Jedi texts in this movie are shown to be books with paper, right? And that, I thought that was fascinating. And we even know that they are books because Yoda says, page turners they are not, okay? Now, one of the things that's really interesting is, this is a movement away from the holocron, okay? So the holocrons have traditionally been part of the Jedi lore, that a holocron, would hold the training and the wisdom of different Jedi masters. Well, these are the original Jedi text, and they are in paper form, which I thought that is huge, right? And actually, I think that what they are talking about by what Disney and Rian Johnson and Kathleen Kennedy decided to do by making them paper text is they are making a very, very, very clear statement on sacred texts and what should be done with them and what should not be done with them. Okay, all right. So what is done and what is not done within The Last Jedi concerning the sacred texts, right? Well, it's very clear. So basically, at that point, there's a point in the film where essentially Luke becomes very upset and decides, I'm committed to this idea that I will be the last Jedi. And he goes to burn the Jedi texts, right? Now, previous to this, Rey has already seen where the Jedi texts were, okay? And at that point in the film, we don't know this, right? But when we look, see the sequence is Rey discovers the Jedi texts, and she discovers them with Luke. Luke says these are worthless. There should be no more Jedi. The Jedi should end, right? Rey is concerned about this, right? Rey and Luke leave the gnarled tree, which is the repository, the archives for the Jedi texts, okay? All right. Then in the movie, there is a scene with Rey specifically taking time to go to the Millennium Falcon, right? Now, at the time within the movie, it isn't shown to us that she has the Jedi texts, but from the timing, it's incredibly clear that she took that opportunity right then, which makes complete sense because Luke is like, I don't think the Jedi should ever exist anymore. So it makes sense that Rey would be highly concerned for the fate of the sacred texts, right? So she steals the sacred texts out of the gnarled tree, out of the sacred text archives, and actually then takes them to the Millennium Falcon and puts them into essentially like a smuggler's bin within the Millennium Falcon, okay? Later, Luke is unaware that the Jedi texts have been stolen. He gets upset. I think this is directly after the scene where he confesses that there was a moment where he ignited his lightsaber over Ben Solo. And oh my gosh, there's lots to say about that, but I'm going to keep this video, keep this content tight, keep it moving right here. Okay. All right. So at this point, Rey has the texts. Luke goes to the gnarled tree and he's like, that's it. I'm going to burn down the gnarled tree and all of the text within, because he still thinks that the texts are within the gnarled tree. Okay, he has a lighter. Okay, and he can't do it. He goes to burn the sacred text, and he cannot do it. Okay, Yoda shows up, Force Ghost Yoda, talking to Luke, and he says, "Hey, and he says, I know you're frustrated. I know you're hurt. You are a master, and you feel that you have failed Ben Solo, and you also feel that you cannot train Rey." And then Yoda says, "Masters are what they move past. We are what our students move past," right? And man, it was wonderful to see Yoda. I really liked it. Yoda then ignites the gnarled tree, burning it. Now, I will tell you right now, I was very upset in the film. Right at that moment, I was like, oh my gosh, they are making a statement that all sacred texts should be burned, that people should just believe whatever they want, and that sacred texts are not important. I'll tell you right now, if the movie had ended like that, I would have been deeply upset, okay? But that wasn't the case. Rey had saved the Jedi texts, and when Yoda burned the gnarled tree, he was making a very, very clear statement. It's clear to us as the viewers. It was not clear to Luke at the time. And he was saying, so I think what Yoda was saying when he burned the gnarled tree is that essentially, the places where we go to worship, the places where we have our the original copies of our sacred text, those places are worthless. They mean nothing. There should be no ornamentation on them. They don't need to be special. We don't need to invest in them. We don't need to make them grandiose. We don't need to pour money and time and effort into them. Those places where the sacred texts are kept, they're just a shell. They're just a container, right? The value is in the sacred texts themselves. And Yoda knew when he burned the gnarled tree that all that was being burnt was the shell, not the sacred texts themselves. Also, one thing that was incredibly important to understand, not only could Luke not burn the sacred texts, but when Yoda ignited the gnarled tree, Luke Skywalker immediately dove into the fiery mass to save the Jedi texts. That just speaks volumes, because I will tell you right now, there are sacred texts in my life, and I would die for them in an instant if I thought the last copies of those things were threatened in any way, right? And I just thought it was so beautiful to see Luke Skywalker saying, my life is worth the sacred texts of the Jedi, even as he struggled to wonder if the Jedi should even exist anymore, right? And that is the kind of dedication to sacred texts that I believe someone who has texts which are sacred to them, that's what you should do. And Yoda was 100% right. There is no value in the container where we keep our sacred texts. The value is in the sacred texts as well. And then even further, you must read and understand your sacred texts. And then you must apply your sacred texts. That's the truth that Luke knew. That's the truth that Rey knew. That's the truth that Yoda knew. Thank you.